In the dimly lit corridors of Mercy Grace Hospital, nestled on the outskirts of Burlington, Vermont, the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment echoed through the neonatal intensive care unit. Baby Nathan, barely 3 days old, fought for every breath in his incubator, while his father, Marcus, lay comatose just 2 floors above. Sarah Chen, a veteran nurse of 15 years, found herself drawn into their story in ways she couldn't explain. The winter wind howled outside the hospital windows, creating an eerie backdrop to the drama unfolding within. Sarah's experienced hands moved with precision as she adjusted Nathan's oxygen levels, her dark eyes fixed on the monitors that displayed his struggling vital signs. The baby's skin held a slight bluish tinge, a sight that made her heart constrict despite her years of professional detachment. "His O2 stats are dropping again," she murmured to Dr. Thompson, who stood beside her, reviewing the latest test results. The doctor's furrowed brow deepened as he studied the numbers. "We're looking at possible pulmonary complications," he said, his voice low and measured. "The birth trauma combined with the premature delivery." He trailed off, leaving the implications hanging in the air. Sarah's mind wandered to the tragic circumstances that brought them here. The car accident that had put Marcus in a coma had also triggered his wife Emily's premature labor. Emily hadn't survived the emergency C-section, leaving Nathan essentially orphaned, with his father suspended between life and death. The night shift stretched endlessly as Sarah moved between Nathan's incubator and Marcus's room. In the ICU, Marcus lay still, his strong frame incongruous with the vulnerability of his current state. His dark hair contrasted sharply with the white hospital linens, and the steady rise and fall of his chest was the only movement in the room. "You need to fight," Sarah whispered to Marcus during her checks. "Your son needs you." She wasn't supposed to get emotionally involved, but something about this case touched a raw nerve. Perhaps it was the memory of her own loss, her younger brother Michael, taken too soon in a similar accident 15 years ago. The monitors in Nathan's room suddenly erupted in a cacophony of alarms. Sarah rushed back, her heart pounding. The baby's oxygen saturation had plummeted dangerously low. Her hands moved automatically, implementing emergency protocols while calling for backup. "Come on, little fighter," she urged, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The next few hours became a blur of medical interventions, consultant visits, and careful monitoring. By dawn, Nathan had stabilized, but the incident left everyone shaken. During her break, Sarah sat in the staff room, clutching a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. She thought about the family photos she'd seen in Marcus's wallet, pictures of him and Emily hiking, their faces glowing with joy and anticipation of their baby's arrival. Now those dreams hung by a thread. Dr. Thompson found her there, his usual confident demeanor softened by exhaustion. "You're getting too attached, Sarah," he said gently, sitting across from her. "Someone has to," she replied, meeting his gaze. "They have no one else. Their closest family is in California, and they won't arrive until next week." "I understand, but do you?" Sarah interrupted, surprising herself with her intensity. That baby up there might never know his parents. Marcus might never wake up to hold his son. Someone needs to care about them as people, not just as patients. The doctor sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Just be careful. You know how these cases can go." Sarah did know. She'd seen too many tragic endings in her career. But something felt different about this case. A pull she couldn't explain, a connection that defied professional boundaries. As her shift neared its end, Sarah made one final round. In Nathan's room, the first light of dawn filtered through the windows, casting a soft glow on the incubator. The baby's vital signs had improved slightly, but he remained critical. In Marcus's room, the morning light revealed the faint traces of worry lines on his forehead, even in unconsciousness. Standing between these two rooms, Sarah felt the weight of their intertwined fates. The medical charts told one story of trauma, complications, and guarded prognoses. But her heart told another, of love, connection, and the mysterious threads that bound these lives together, including her own. The storm that descended upon Burlington that night was unlike anything the hospital staff had witnessed before. Rain lashed against the windows with unusual force, and lightning illuminated the sky in brilliant flashes. Sarah had just finished checking on Nathan when the first unusual events began to unfold. Through the torrential downpour, a magnificent white horse appeared in the hospital's courtyard, its coat gleaming despite the darkness. The security cameras caught the moment, the horse walking purposefully through the parking lot, past the emergency entrance, as if guided by an invisible force. The animal's presence created an immediate stir among the night staff. "There's a horse in the ambulance bay," called out Jake, the security guard, his voice crackling over the intercom. "This isn't some regular horse, it's like something out of a fairy tale." Sarah rushed to the window, drawn by an inexplicable urgency. The horse, which they would later learn was named Spirit, stood perfectly still in the rain, its mane flowing in the wind. Its presence seemed to defy logic. No farms existed nearby, and no one had reported a missing horse. "We should call animal control," suggested Dr. Thompson, reaching for the phone. "Wait," Sarah interjected, watching as Spirit moved with deliberate steps toward the hospital entrance. "Something's different about this." The automatic doors opened, and to everyone's amazement, Spirit walked in with the grace and confidence of a welcomed guest. The night staff stood frozen, watching as the horse made its way through the corridor, hooves clicking softly on the linoleum floor. "This is impossible," muttered Dr. Thompson, but even he seemed captivated by the surreal scene unfolding before them. Spirit stopped first at Marcus's room, nickering softly through the glass door. Then, as if drawn by an invisible thread, the horse moved toward the NICU. Sarah followed, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and wonder. When Spirit reached Nathan's room, something extraordinary happened. The monitors, which had been showing concerning readings all night, began to stabilize. The baby's oxygen levels improved, and his heart rate settled into a stronger rhythm. "I don't believe what I'm seeing," whispered Dr. Thompson, studying the monitors. "These readings, they're better than they've been since he was born." Sarah approached Spirit cautiously, noting the intelligent gleam in the horse's eyes. As she drew closer, she noticed a worn leather bracelet around the horse's neck, bearing the name Anderson Ranch. The name triggered a memory. Marcus had mentioned his grandfather's ranch during one of her routine checks, reading from his medical history. The connection clicked into place. "This horse belongs to Marcus's grandfather," Sarah announced, her voice filled with wonder. "He runs a therapeutic riding program in Montana." The night progressed like a dream. Despite hospital protocols, no one could bring themselves to remove Spirit. The horse stood quietly by Nathan's incubator, occasionally touching the glass gently with its nose. The baby's vital signs continued to improve, defying medical expectations. During her rounds, Sarah noticed other subtle changes. The atmosphere in both rooms had shifted, the air felt lighter, charged with a kind of energy she couldn't explain. Even the other babies in the NICU seemed calmer, their monitors showing more stable readings. Around midnight, while checking Marcus's vitals, Sarah noticed his brain activity patterns changing. "Dr. Thompson," she called out, studying the readings. "Look at this." The doctor hurried over, his skepticism momentarily forgotten as he examined the monitors. "These patterns, they're showing increased activity. It's as if he's responding to something." Sarah watched as Spirit moved between the two rooms throughout the night, maintaining a silent vigil over father and son. The horse's presence seemed to bridge the gap between them, creating a connection that transcended physical space. By morning, word of Spirit's arrival had spread throughout the hospital. Staff members from other floors found excuses to pass by, wanting to witness the miracle for themselves. The horse's calm demeanor and gentle presence touched everyone who saw it. As dawn approached, Sarah sat in Nathan's room, documenting the night's events in the medical record. How does one record a miracle? She wondered, trying to find clinical terms to describe the inexplicable improvements in both patients' conditions. "You know we can't keep him here indefinitely," Dr. Thompson said softly, joining her. "But I can't deny what I've seen tonight." Sarah nodded, watching as Spirit gently nuzzled the incubator. "Sometimes the things we can't explain are the ones that matter most," she replied. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about animals appearing as guardians in times of need. I never really believed them until now." The morning shift arrived to find Spirit still standing guard, his white coat now bathed in the golden light of dawn. The storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed hospital wing and a story that would be told for years to come. As Sarah prepared to end her shift, she took one last look at the scene before her. Nathan's color had improved significantly, his tiny chest rising and falling with stronger breaths. Marcus's monitors continued to show encouraging signs of increased brain activity. And Spirit, the mysterious guardian who had appeared in their darkest hour, remained a steady presence, bridging the gap between science and miracle. The days following Spirit's miraculous arrival at Mercy Grace Hospital were filled with a palpable sense of hope and wonder. As the sun rose on the third day, Sarah returned to her shift, her mind still reeling from the events she had witnessed. The hospital administration had reluctantly agreed to allow Spirit to stay, swayed by the undeniable positive effects on both Nathan and Marcus, as well as the calming influence on the entire ward. Sarah entered Nathan's room, where Spirit stood vigilant beside the incubator. The baby's vital signs had stabilized remarkably, his color improved, and his tiny fingers now gripped with surprising strength. Dr. Thompson was already there, poring over the latest test results with a mix of disbelief and excitement. "Sarah, look at these numbers," he said, handing her the chart. "Nathan's lung function has improved by 30% since Spirit arrived. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Sarah reviewed the data, her heart swelling with hope. "And Marcus?" she asked, her thoughts turning to the comatose father 2 floors above. Dr. Thompson's expression softened. "That's the other thing I wanted to discuss with you. His EEG readings are showing increased activity, particularly when Spirit is in the room. It's as if he's responding to the horse's presence." The implications of this development were staggering. Sarah felt a surge of emotion as she considered the possibility of Marcus waking up, of father and son finally meeting. She turned to Spirit, who nickered softly as if in understanding. "I've been doing some research," Sarah said, stroking Spirit's mane. "Marcus's grandfather, John Anderson, runs a therapeutic riding program in Montana. Apparently, he's well known in certain circles for his belief in the healing power of horses." Dr. Thompson raised an eyebrow. "You think there's a connection?" Sarah shrugged, but her eyes were bright with possibility. "I don't know, but I can't ignore what I'm seeing. There's something special about Spirit, something that goes beyond conventional medicine." As they spoke, a soft knock on the door interrupted them. Lisa, one of the NICU nurses, poked her head in. "Sarah, there's someone here to see you. Says he's Marcus's grandfather." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She exchanged a glance with Dr. Thompson before hurrying out to meet the visitor. John Anderson stood in the waiting area, a tall man in his 70s with weather-worn skin and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. His presence seemed to fill the room, much like Spirit's had done days before. "Mr. Anderson," Sarah greeted him, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah Chen, one of the nurses caring for your great-grandson and grandson." John's grip was firm and warm. "Please, call me John. I came as soon as I heard about Spirit showing up here. I had a feeling he might be needed." Sarah led John to a quiet corner where they could talk. As they sat, she noticed the same leather bracelet Spirit wore around John's wrist. "You knew Spirit would come here?" she asked, unable to hide her curiosity. John's eyes twinkled. "Spirit has always had a way of knowing where he's needed most. When I heard about Marcus and the baby, I had a feeling our old friend might make an appearance." Over the next hour, John shared stories of Spirit's remarkable history at the Anderson Ranch. He spoke of children with autism who found their voice after riding Spirit, of veterans with PTSD who found peace in the horse's presence, and of countless other seemingly miraculous events. "There's a connection between humans and animals that goes beyond what we can explain," John said, his voice filled with conviction. "Spirit has always been special, even among the other horses. He seems to have a sixth sense for healing." As John spoke, Sarah felt a shift in her own perspective. She had always prided herself on her scientific approach to nursing, but Spirit's presence had awakened something in her, a recognition of the mysteries that existed beyond the realm of traditional medicine. "Would you like to see them?" Sarah asked, standing up. John nodded, his eyes misting slightly. They made their way first to Marcus's room. As they entered, Spirit, who had been standing by Nathan's incubator, suddenly appeared in the doorway. John let out a soft chuckle. "Always one step ahead, aren't you, old friend?" The reunion between horse and owner was touching. Spirit nuzzled John's hand, and the old man leaned his forehead against the horse's, whispering words too soft for Sarah to hear. The monitors in Marcus's room began to show increased activity. "Talk to him, John," Sarah encouraged, noting the changes. "Some part of him might be able to hear you." John approached the bed, taking his grandson's hand. "Marcus, my boy," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm here. Your son is fighting, and so must you. Spirit's here to help, just like he always has been for our family." As John spoke, Sarah noticed Marcus's fingers twitch slightly, the first voluntary movement he had shown since the accident. She held her breath, not daring to hope too much, but feeling the weight of the moment. They moved to Nathan's room next, where John gently placed his hand on the incubator. "Hello, little one," he said softly. "You've got your grandmother's fighting spirit, that's for sure." Throughout the day, John alternated between the two rooms, talking, singing old cowboy songs, and simply being present. Spirit moved with him, a constant, calming presence. Sarah watched in amazement as both Nathan and Marcus seemed to respond to John's voice and Spirit's presence. As evening approached, Sarah found John in the hospital chapel, his head bowed in quiet reflection. She sat beside him, feeling a connection that transcended their brief acquaintance. "You know," John said without looking up, "I've seen a lot of miracles in my time with Spirit. But seeing him here, with my grandson and great-grandson, it reminds me that there's still so much we don't understand about the power of love and connection." Sarah nodded, thinking of her own journey over the past few days. "I've always believed in the science of medicine," she admitted. "But Spirit's presence here, it's making me question everything I thought I knew." John turned to her, his eyes kind. "The best healers, in my experience, are those who can balance the science with the inexplicable. You have that gift, Sarah. I can see it in the way you care for Marcus and Nathan." As they sat in companionable silence, Sarah felt a sense of peace wash over her. She realized that her connection to this family and to Spirit had awakened something long dormant within her, a belief in the power of love and the mysteries of life that science alone couldn't explain. The sun was setting as Sarah finished her shift, casting a warm glow over the hospital. She paused at the nursery window, watching as John sat between Marcus and Nathan's rooms, Spirit standing faithfully beside him. In that moment, she knew that regardless of the outcome, she was witnessing something truly extraordinary, a testament to the unbreakable bonds of family, the healing power of nature, and the miracles that occur when hope and love intertwine. As the days turned into weeks, the presence of Spirit at Mercy Grace Hospital continued to create ripples of change that extended far beyond Nathan and Marcus's rooms. The once sterile and somber atmosphere of the hospital corridors had transformed into something warmer, more hopeful. Staff members found themselves lingering in the NICU and ICU, drawn by the inexplicable aura of peace that seemed to emanate from Spirit's presence. Sarah, now working closely with John Anderson, had become the unofficial liaison between the medical staff and the growing number of visitors curious about the miracle horse. She found herself navigating a delicate balance between maintaining hospital protocols and embracing the unconventional healing that was undeniably taking place. One crisp morning, as Sarah was checking Nathan's vitals, she noticed a significant improvement. The baby's lungs, once weak and struggling, now showed remarkable strength. Dr. Thompson entered the room, his face a mixture of amazement and professional skepticism. "I've been reviewing Nathan's latest scans," he said, pulling up images on the tablet. "The improvement in his lung development is, well, it's unprecedented. At this rate, we might be able to remove him from the incubator within the week." Sarah's heart soared at the news. She glanced at Spirit, who stood quietly in the corner, his presence a constant comfort. "Have you seen anything like this before?" she asked. Dr. Thompson shook his head. "In all my years of practice, never. It's as if..." He paused, struggling to find the right words, as if the very air in this room is accelerating his healing. As they discussed Nathan's progress, a commotion from Marcus's room caught their attention. They rushed down the hall to find John standing by his grandson's bedside, tears streaming down his face. Spirit had somehow made his way into the room and was gently nuzzling Marcus's hand. "He squeezed my hand," John said, his voice choked with emotion. "It was faint, but I felt it." Sarah immediately checked Marcus's vital signs, noting a significant increase in brain activity. "This is incredible," she breathed, watching as Marcus's fingers twitched again, ever so slightly. Over the next few hours, the ICU buzzed with cautious excitement. Neurologists were called in, tests were run, and the medical team huddled in intense discussion. Sarah overheard fragments of conversation: unexplained neural regeneration, possible breakthrough in coma recovery, need for further study. As word spread about Marcus's responsiveness, Sarah noticed a change in the hospital staff. Nurses who had been skeptical of Spirit's presence now spoke in hushed, reverent tones. Even the most hardened doctors seemed touched by the unfolding events. Amidst the flurry of activity, Sarah found a quiet moment to sit with John in the hospital's small garden. The old rancher looked tired but happy, his weathered hands gently stroking Spirit's mane as the horse grazed nearby. "You know," John began, his eyes distant with memory, "when Marcus was a boy, he used to spend his summers at the ranch. He and Spirit had a special bond from the start. That horse would follow him everywhere, like a loyal dog." Sarah listened, captivated by the story and the depth of emotion in John's voice. "There was this one time," he continued, "when Marcus fell into a creek and got swept downstream. Before any of us could react, Spirit had galloped alongside the creek, gotten ahead of Marcus, and waded in to block his path. Saved his life, that horse did." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. "It's as if Spirit is trying to save him again," she said softly. John nodded, a sad smile playing on his lips. "Horses, they have a way of knowing things we don't. Of healing things we can't see. I've watched Spirit work miracles on the ranch, but this feels different. Like he's fighting not just for Marcus, but for that little boy up there too." As they sat in companionable silence, Sarah reflected on her own journey over the past weeks. She thought about the countless nights she had spent by Nathan's incubator, whispering stories and encouragement. She remembered the hours spent in Marcus's room, talking to him about his son's progress, holding his hand, and willing him to wake up. "You know, Sarah," John said, breaking into her thoughts, "I've been watching you with them. You've got a gift, a way of connecting that goes beyond just being a nurse. It reminds me of how Spirit is with people, intuitive, compassionate." Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest at John's words. "I never thought I'd say this, but Spirit has taught me so much about healing. About hope. It's changing the way I approach my work, my patients." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden, Sarah's pager buzzed urgently. "It's Nathan," she said, jumping to her feet. "We need to go." They rushed back to the NICU, Spirit following close behind. As they entered Nathan's room, they found Dr. Thompson and a team of nurses gathered around the incubator. For a heart-stopping moment, Sarah feared the worst. But as she approached, she saw something miraculous. Nathan, his tiny face scrunched in concentration, had opened his eyes for the first time. His gaze, unfocused but bright, seemed to search the room until it landed on Spirit, standing just beyond the incubator. "This is remarkable," Dr. Thompson said, his voice barely above a whisper. "His responses are exceeding all our expectations. It's as if he knew Spirit was here." As they watched, Nathan's hand reached out, his fingers stretching towards the direction of the horse. Without prompting, Spirit moved closer, gently touching his nose to the incubator's side. The monitors showed a surge of positive readings: increased oxygen saturation, steadier heart rate, improved brain activity. The room fell silent, everyone present aware that they were witnessing something beyond the realm of conventional medicine. Sarah felt tears well up in her eyes as she watched the connection between the tiny baby and the majestic horse, a bond that seemed to transcend the physical world. In that moment, a nurse burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Marcus," she gasped. "He's showing signs of waking up." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Marcus's eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first but gradually sharpening. His first word, barely audible, was Nathan. Sarah and John worked together, coordinating with the medical team to bring father and son together for the first time since the accident. As Nathan was carefully placed in Marcus's arms, with Spirit standing guard nearby, Sarah felt a profound sense of completion. The journey that had begun on that stormy night weeks ago had culminated in this moment of reunion and healing. Looking around the room, at John's tears of joy, Dr. Thompson's amazed expression, the tender scene of father and son, and Spirit's watchful presence, Sarah knew she had been part of something truly extraordinary. It was a reminder that healing comes in many forms, and that sometimes, the most powerful medicine is the inexplicable bond between living beings. As she stepped back to give the family their moment, Sarah silently thanked Spirit for the lessons in hope, connection, and the mysteries of life that she would carry with her always. The weeks following Marcus's awakening and Nathan's remarkable progress were filled with a mixture of joy, challenges, and unexpected turns. As summer began to bloom outside the hospital windows, Mercy Grace found itself at the center of a media storm. News of the miracle horse had spread far beyond Burlington, drawing attention from medical researchers, animal behaviorists, and even skeptics eager to debunk the story. Sarah, now an unwitting spokesperson for the events, found herself juggling her nursing duties with impromptu press conferences and meetings with hospital administration. The once quiet corridors buzzed with activity as film crews set up equipment and researchers pored over medical charts. One particularly humid afternoon, Sarah stood in Nathan's room, watching as Marcus cradled his son. The bond between them had grown stronger each day, defying the odds and bringing tears to the eyes of even the most hardened staff members. Spirit, ever present, stood nearby, his gentle eyes watchful. "How are you holding up?" Sarah asked Marcus, noting the fatigue etched on his face. Marcus smiled weakly. "It's overwhelming," he admitted. "I'm grateful beyond words, but all this attention, sometimes I wish we could just be a normal family." Sarah nodded understandingly. The pressure of being at the center of a miracle was taking its toll on everyone involved. Even John, with his calm demeanor, had begun to show signs of strain. As they talked, Dr. Thompson entered the room, his face grave. "We need to talk," he said, gesturing for Sarah to join him in the hallway. Outside, Dr. Thompson's voice was low and urgent. "The ethics committee is meeting tomorrow. There's growing concern about Spirit's presence in the hospital. Some board members are arguing that it's a liability issue, others are worried about the scientific integrity of our work here." Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach. "But the results speak for themselves," she argued. "Nathan's recovery, Marcus waking up, we can't ignore the impact Spirit has had." Dr. Thompson sighed heavily. "I know, Sarah. I've been advocating for continuing this, whatever it is. But we're facing pressure from multiple sides. Some want to turn this into a full-scale research project, others want to shut it down entirely." As they discussed the implications, a commotion arose from Nathan's room. They rushed back in to find Marcus standing shakily, his face pale. "Something's wrong," he gasped, pointing at Nathan. The baby, who had been improving steadily, was suddenly in distress. His oxygen levels plummeted, and alarms blared from the monitors. Sarah's training kicked in as she called for emergency assistance. In the chaos that followed, Spirit became agitated, pacing and nickering anxiously. As medical staff swarmed around Nathan's crib, the horse pushed forward, trying to get closer to the baby. "Get that animal out of here," shouted one of the doctors, not familiar with Spirit's usual calm presence. John appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of concern. "Wait," he called out, "let Spirit through." For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The medical team hesitated, torn between protocol and the inexplicable events they had witnessed over the past weeks. Sarah, her heart racing, made a split-second decision. "Let him in," she said firmly, using her body to create a path for Spirit. As the horse approached Nathan's crib, a hush fell over the room. Spirit gently lowered his head, touching his nose to Nathan's tiny hand. Almost immediately, the alarms began to quiet. Nathan's oxygen levels started to rise, and his erratic heartbeat steadied. The medical team watched in stunned silence as Nathan's crisis passed, his vitals returning to normal under Spirit's watchful gaze. Marcus, overcome with emotion, leaned against the horse for support, tears streaming down his face. Dr. Thompson, who had been observing from the doorway, stepped forward. "I've seen a lot in my career," he said slowly, "but nothing like this. We need to reconsider everything we think we know about healing." The next morning, as the ethics committee convened, Sarah found herself standing before a panel of stern-faced administrators and medical professionals. She spoke passionately about the events she had witnessed, the inexplicable bond between Spirit, Nathan, and Marcus, and the profound impact on the entire hospital. "I know what we're seeing defies conventional medicine," she concluded, her voice steady despite her nerves. "But isn't our duty to heal, to explore every possibility that might benefit our patients? Spirit's presence here has done more than just help one family. It's reminded all of us of the power of hope, of connection, of believing in something greater than ourselves." As the committee deliberated, Sarah waited anxiously with John, Marcus, and a small group of supportive staff members. The minutes ticked by like hours until finally, Dr. Thompson emerged from the conference room. "They've reached a decision," he announced, his expression unreadable. "They're going to allow Spirit to stay, under controlled conditions. They want to establish a formal study to document and analyze what's happening here." The news was met with a mixture of relief and excitement. As word spread throughout the hospital, there was a palpable sense of a new chapter beginning. Over the next few months, Mercy Grace Hospital transformed. A dedicated wing was set up for animal-assisted therapy, with Spirit as its centerpiece. Researchers from around the country flocked to Burlington, eager to study the phenomenon. Nathan, growing stronger every day, became a symbol of hope for other families facing similar challenges. Marcus, fully recovered and deeply changed by his experience, worked alongside John to expand the therapeutic riding program. They began bringing other horses from the Anderson Ranch, creating a bridge between the hospital and the healing power of nature. Sarah, recognized for her role in the events, found herself at the forefront of a new field of study combining traditional medicine with alternative healing practices. She never forgot the lessons learned during those critical weeks, the importance of intuition, the power of connection, and the mysteries that exist beyond scientific explanation. As autumn painted the trees outside the hospital in vibrant hues, Sarah stood in the new therapy garden, watching as Spirit gently nuzzled a group of young patients. Nathan, now crawling and babbling happily, played nearby under Marcus's watchful eye. John joined her, his weathered face creased in a contented smile. "You know," he said, "when I first brought Spirit to the ranch all those years ago, I never imagined anything like this. But I always knew he was special." Sarah nodded, thinking of the journey that had brought them all to this point. "He's changed so many lives," she mused. "Not just Nathan and Marcus, but everyone who's been touched by this story." As they talked, Dr. Thompson approached, holding a stack of papers. "The first results from our study are in," he announced, his eyes bright with excitement. "What we're seeing, it's revolutionary. The implications for patient care, for our understanding of healing itself." Sarah listened as Dr. Thompson outlined the findings: increased recovery rates, improved mental health outcomes, even changes in the hospital's overall atmosphere. But as she watched Spirit with the patients, she knew that the most profound impacts couldn't be captured in charts or graphs. It was the renewed sense of purpose in the hospital staff, the hope in the eyes of worried parents, the laughter of children who found comfort in Spirit's presence. It was the breaking down of barriers between traditional and alternative medicine, the recognition that healing comes in many forms. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the garden, Sarah felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey that had begun on that stormy night months ago had led to a transformation she could never have imagined. In Spirit, in the Anderson family, and in the miracle they had all witnessed, she had found not just a new approach to medicine, but a renewed faith in the power of love, connection, and the indomitable spirit of life itself. As the crisp autumn air gave way to the first whispers of winter, Mercy Grace Hospital stood as a beacon of hope and innovation in the medical community. The story of Spirit, Nathan, and Marcus had not only transformed the lives of those directly involved but had sparked a revolution in patient care across the country. Sarah Chen, now the head of the newly established Integrative Therapy Department, found herself at the center of this paradigm shift. On a chilly November morning, she stood before a packed auditorium at the National Medical Conference in Boston, preparing to present the findings of their groundbreaking study. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "a year ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing here talking about the healing power of a horse, I would have questioned their sanity." A ripple of laughter spread through the audience. "But today, I'm here to share with you a story that challenges everything we thought we knew about medicine, healing, and the connections between all living beings." For the next hour, Sarah detailed the incredible journey that had unfolded at Mercy Grace. She presented case studies, brain scans, and recovery statistics that left even the most skeptical attendees in awe. As she spoke, she could see the faces in the audience transform, from curiosity to disbelief, and finally to a sense of wonder and possibility. "What we've witnessed goes beyond the realm of traditional medicine," Sarah concluded. "It speaks to the power of hope, the importance of emotional connections in healing, and the potential for interspecies bonds to catalyze recovery in ways we're only beginning to understand." As applause filled the auditorium, Sarah felt a sense of validation wash over her. The journey that had begun with a stormy night and a mysterious white horse had led to this moment, a turning point in medical history. Back in Burlington, the impact of their work continued to grow. Mercy Grace had become a pillar of the community, drawing patients and researchers from around the world. The hospital grounds, once sterile and unwelcoming, now boasted extensive gardens and a small stable where spirit and other therapy animals resided. On a crisp December afternoon, Sarah walked through these gardens with Marcus, Nathan, and John. Nathan, now a lively toddler, giggled as he chased fallen leaves, his once fragile body now strong and full of life. "Sometimes I still can't believe how far we've come," Marcus mused, watching his son play. "There were moments when I thought I'd never wake up, never get to hold him." Sarah nodded, remembering those tense early days. "It's been an incredible journey for all of us," she said. "How's the new program going?" Marcus's face lit up. "The Therapeutic Riding Center is thriving. We're working with veterans, children with disabilities, even corporate stress management programs. Spirit's legacy is touching so many lives." As they talked, they approached the stable where Spirit stood in his stall, his white coat gleaming in the winter sunlight. The horse nickered softly as they drew near, his intelligent eyes seeming to hold the wisdom of all they'd been through together. John, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "You know, when I first brought Spirit to the ranch, I knew he was special. But I never imagined he'd change the world like this." Sarah reached out to stroke Spirit's nose, feeling the familiar sense of calm that always came over her in his presence. "He's taught us so much," she said softly. "About healing, about connection, about believing in something greater than ourselves." As they stood there, Sarah reflected on the changes in her own life. The skeptical, by-the-book nurse she had once been seemed like a distant memory. In its place was a woman who had learned to balance scientific rigor with an openness to the unexplained, who had discovered depths of compassion and intuition she never knew she possessed. The sound of approaching footsteps drew their attention. Dr. Thompson, now the hospital's chief of medicine, joined them, his face alight with excitement. "Sarah, you won't believe this," he said, slightly out of breath. "We've just received word from the National Institutes of Health. They want to establish a center for integrative medicine here at Mercy Grace. Full funding, state-of-the-art facilities, it's everything we've been working towards." The news was met with joy and a sense of vindication. What had started as a miraculous event had grown into a movement, challenging long-held beliefs and opening new frontiers in medicine. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the hospital grounds, Sarah found herself alone with Spirit. She leaned against the fence of his paddock, watching as the magnificent horse grazed peacefully. "You've changed so many lives," she said softly, more to herself than to Spirit. "Mine included." Spirit lifted his head, his ears pricking forward as if listening. In that moment, Sarah felt a profound connection, not just to the horse, but to everything that had transpired over the past year. The countless nights spent by patients' bedsides, the breakthroughs and setbacks, the tears of joy and sorrow, the unbreakable bonds formed in the face of adversity. She thought of Nathan, once a fragile infant fighting for every breath, now running and laughing in the garden. Of Marcus, awakened from the depths of a coma to embrace life with renewed passion. Of John, whose unwavering faith in the healing power of animals had set this entire journey in motion. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared in the sky, Sarah made her way back to the hospital. The corridors, once stark and clinical, now hummed with a warmth that went beyond mere decoration. Artwork created by patients adorned the walls, and the sound of gentle music drifted from the therapy rooms. In the NICU, where it had all begun, Sarah paused to watch a young mother singing softly to her premature twins. A therapy dog lay curled at the foot of the chair, its presence bringing comfort to both mother and babies. The scene was a testament to how far they'd come, how much had changed. Later that night, as Sarah prepared to head home, she stopped by her office to gather her things. On her desk sat a framed photo, a snapshot from Nathan's first birthday party. In it, Nathan sat atop Spirit, his tiny hands buried in the horse's maner, while Marcus and John stood nearby, their faces beaming with joy. Sarah herself was in the picture, caught in a moment of laughter, looking more relaxed and happy than she could ever remember feeling. As she gazed at the photo, Sarah felt a surge of gratitude for the journey she had been on. She had entered the medical field with a desire to heal, to make a difference in people's lives. But it took a miraculous horse and an extraordinary series of events to show her what healing truly meant, not just mending bodies, but touching souls, fostering connections, and embracing the mysteries of life itself. With a smile, Sarah turned off the lights in her office and stepped out into the night. The stars twinkled overhead, and a gentle breeze carried the faint scent of hay from the stables. As she walked to her car, Sarah felt a sense of peace and purpose wash over her. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, she knew that the lessons learned from Spirit, from Nathan and Marcus, from this entire incredible journey, would guide her forward. In the end, it wasn't just about the miracles they had witnessed or the groundbreaking research they had conducted. It was about the profound reminder that in the space between science and mystery, between logic and faith, there lay the true art of healing, an art that Sarah, and all those touched by Spirit's presence, would continue to explore and celebrate for years to come.